Now today I've got a very quick video for you on the coronavirus vaccine, more specifically some worrying statistics coming out about uptake of the vaccine from black, Asian and minority ethnic folks. Let's have a look. So the headline here from The Guardian, COVID vaccine, 72% of black people unlikely to have the jab, UK survey finds. Now immediately that is quite worrying. 72% is pretty high. I know that there is a lot of vaccine skepticism at the moment, but 72% of black folks is not good, and I'll explain why that is such a troubling number in a moment. Advisors from the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, SAGE, have raised fresh concerns over COVID vaccine uptake among black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, as research showed up to 72% of black people said they were unlikely to have the jab. Historical issues of unethical healthcare research and structural institutional racism and discrimination are key reasons for lower levels of trust in the vaccination program, a report from SAGE said. This is very, very true, and especially in the United States you have issues such as the Tuskegee syphilis study, which was actually backed by the US CDC, Center for Disease Control, and they carried out research for 40 years, between 1932 and 1972, which aimed to observe the natural history of syphilis, and they used African American men specifically to trial these unethical practices. Researchers let African Americans with syphilis go untreated for decades. You know, this was hugely unethical, targeted at Tuskegee University, which is an historically black college, and you know, this just sows distrust, these kind of things, and so it's not surprising to see that so many folks of colour are not going to be immediately open to taking a vaccine when there is this level of distrust. In late November, the researchers contacted 12,035 participants to investigate the prevalence of coronavirus vaccine hesitancy in the UK. Overall, there's high levels of willingness to be vaccinated. 82% of people said they were likely or very likely to have the jab, rising to 96% among people over the age of 75. I think that's actually one of the highest levels of compliance. I think YouGov did some polling and they found that the UK is second in terms of willingness to have the vaccine. You have other countries like France which are way down, and there's lots of issues about France, but when you look at certain groups, women, younger people and those with lower levels of education, they are less willing to have the vaccine. But folks from black groups, right, 72% said they were unlikely or very unlikely to be vaccinated. Among Pakistani and Bangladeshi groups, this figure is just 42%. Now, why is this worrying? Well, it's because if you look at groups like Bangladeshi folks, people of Bangladeshi ethnicity, according to the UK government and ONS Public Health England, are twice as likely to die from COVID-19 as people of a white British background. Twice as likely. And for other minority groups, that figure is between 10 and 50%. So you have a situation where you have high levels of vaccine hesitancy, the one thing that has the power to get us out of this pandemic. At the same time, the folks who are dying disproportionately from coronavirus are the same folks that don't want to take the vaccine. So now we're in a bit of a conundrum, right? This is a bit of a sticky wicket. How are we going to get out of this mess? How do we increase trust with black, Asian, minority ethnic folks that the vaccine is safe? What is causing all of this disinformation? Well, just anecdotally, I can tell you that if you look at social media, the number one thing for me personally, when I see high levels of vaccine hesitancy among black, Asian, minority ethnic folks, the number one thing that I attribute it to is social media, WhatsApp and Facebook. That is it as far as I'm concerned. I would go as far as to say 99% of the distrust is from social media, because the amount of times like I have been sent nonsense, my mum has been sent nonsense, is just ridiculous. All these crazy videos, these crazy memes, I mean, I can't even talk about it on here because obviously, you know, I don't want to increase the salience of that nonsense. But you have these absolutely barking mad nutcases sending ridiculous just disinformation about the vaccine. That spreads like wildfire. You know, everyone's got WhatsApp, everyone's got Facebook. The amount of messages that I have seen which have been forwarded many times, WhatsApp will literally tell you if a message has been forwarded many times, and the disinformation just spreads like wildfire. People are not reading reliable sources they are reading nutcases, anti-vaxxer, barking mad nutcases on Facebook and on WhatsApp. And that is the reason why I think you have a high level of skepticism. Not just the historical, institutional racism, but it's also what people are viewing. You know, my mum, for example, doesn't have a Facebook account, and frankly, in the era of coronavirus, I'm actually kind of glad she doesn't. So she's insulated from all of that nonsense. She doesn't get to see any of the barky, mad, crazy people. You know, she is just used to checking reliable sources. She listens to LBC radio, she watches BBC News, CNN, things like that. Reliable sources about the vaccine, listening to the scientists. But I genuinely believe, anecdotally speaking, part of the reason why BAME folks are so hesitant is mainly social media. No question about it. The report emphasised the need for engagement with trusted sources such as GPs and scientists from within the BAME communities to respond to concerns about vaccine safety and efficacy. And to follow on from that, I'd actually say we need more Black, Asian, minority ethnic role models to be taking the vaccine. When you look at the celebrities who have been vaccinated for coronavirus so far, it's mostly older white folks that have been vaccinated. Very, very famous people. You look at people like Prue Leith, Ian McKellen, all these great role models who are in the age bracket that are prioritised for the vaccine. They've all been vaccinated, which is absolutely fantastic. What about ethnic minority folks? What about Trevor McDonald? What about Shirley Bassey? People like that. Because I think trusted figures like that in the black community could have the potential to make a difference. And especially as we get down through the age brackets, who are going to be the black, Asian, minority ethnic role models to prove that the vaccine is safe? Who's going to be the folks that can prove it? Marcus Rashford, for example, when it's his turn to get the vaccine, he's been such an outstanding role model for our community with Free School Meal campaign. Someone like him would be the perfect role model. To younger folks, because younger folks are also less likely to take the vaccine, someone like him would be an absolutely outstanding role model as well. And I think the other important thing to point out about the vaccine is that, you know, a lot of people, I was listening to LBC radio recently, and quite a few black people were calling in and saying, well, I'm not going to take the coronavirus vaccine because it's not been tested enough, and I'm going to protect my immune system, build up my immune system, that's the way to beat it. Well, first of all, it's important to realise that the vaccine, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, has actually been in trials since April of last year. So by the time most of us get it, it will have actually been in use for over a year, right? And, you know, you think about the future, travelling abroad, for example, by the time international travel opens up for most of the world, it will have been about 2 years since the vaccine was being trialled. So, you know, the argument about long-term side effects doesn't really cut muster at that point. But even still, when it comes to the vaccine, you take the Pfizer vaccine, for example, Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, 43,000 participants were on that trial, right? According to the British Medical Journal. So, you know, I think we would have had a very good idea by now if there was going to be anything wrong with the vaccine. I think the arguments that are being presented about how long-term side effects and the vaccine's not been tested enough and blah, 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 blah. I don't buy it at all. I trust the scientists. I don't read nonsense on Facebook. I think too many people, especially from our community, are sucked into the nonsense on Facebook and WhatsApp and need to be plugged in to the reality and the real world. The vaccine is safe. There's no question in my mind. Frankly, I would take the vaccine tomorrow if it was offered to me. There's no question in my mind I'll be taking it. And I think we need to have accurate information spreading like wildfire on social media, not the nonsense from nutcases that is so easy, you know, this, that, the other. We need to have accurate information, and we need to have role models from our community demonstrating that the vaccine is safe and effective.